Welcome to our question and answer session at Birken Forest Monastery. I am Ajahn Sona, and let's begin with the first question, Metta.
The first question is from Chris from Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, United States. Can one become a Sotāpanna, having taken the 5 precepts and cut the first 3 fetters, yet are uncertain that they won't kill to defend their family should that unfortunate situation arise?
Yeah, this is an ethical question, and it's quite a startling revelation for some people to come across in the texts. One thing I perhaps can suggest is that people watch my talks on the 4 stages of enlightenment. The first stage of call is called stream enter Sotāpanna. Second stage, once returner. Third stage, non-returner, and the 4th stage, arahant. These are beginning with the stream enter, the Sotāpanna. This is a glimpse of the Dhamma. The eye of Dhamma opens, and one enters the stream. So this is not a matter of just taking the 5 precepts. This is something automatically happens in the system. And it is that the mind no longer can transgress these 5 precepts. In this case, it's not a choice. You're not making a choice. It's not that you might or might not do something. It's that you can't. It's, a sheep or a cow, if offered a bacon sandwich, does not eat it. And just not part of their character. So there are people, of course, who just simply don't have it in them to kill under any circumstances, neither for their own sake or for the sake of others. And this is something that takes place within the psychology of the person, and their vision of life is what has caused this. So this isn't just taking the precepts. There are other people who, in fact, could kill in circumstances like defending your family or in self-defense. By the way, this killing would have to be intentional, aiming at death. Sometimes, in somebody is defending themselves and one thing leads to another and the person who is attacking them dies, but not because the person who was defending themselves wished they would die or attempted to kill them, but somebody strikes their head on the sidewalk or something like that. So when we speak of killing, it's the intention to kill and then the actions that follow and the resultant. So can this first stage of enlightenment, this Sotāpanna, formulate the intention to kill even? And according to the texts, according to the Pali Canon, they cannot. Not that they do not, they cannot. So that is the way it's described again and again all throughout the Pali Canon. There's no exemptions or exceptions to this. Other people who are by faith Buddhist and are committed to the 5 precepts may also abstain from killing, even at the cost of their own lives or the lives of their friends or relatives. And they do that out of faith, but it's not that they can't formulate the intention. They just think that the Buddha is wiser, and in the long run, it's better to just follow the the advice of the Buddha. So that's somebody who is still what we would call a worldling, putu-jana. There is a term for this. Before these stages of enlightenment, one is a putu-jana, a worldly person. But you might be very faithful, devoted to the teachings of the Buddha, and be very virtuous and ethical. But the vision of Dhamma has not arisen yet. The structures of the mind have not been permanently altered. So that is the basics for that question.
The next question is from Benedict from Dortmund, North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany. In breath meditation, the instruction is given that the in-breath is cool and the out-breath is body temperature. But then I cannot feel the out-breath because it is the same temperature as the body. So only the in-breath can be focused on. A similar situation is determining if the breath is short or long. Here, the breath needs to be compared with previous breaths from the past. So again, there is discursive thinking. Please advise.
Yeah, you've carefully considered this matter. However, I would say that you can, in fact, feel the external, the out-breath, even though it is bodily temperature. If you place your attention at the right place, you can feel the air flow. This is something I've gone into in fair depth in terms of the location for the focus of the mind on the breath. It is not explicit in the suttas where the breath is located. There are suggestions in there. There are these words, mukha dwaram, the doorway, the doorway to the face, which is interpreted in the commentaries, the Visuddhimagga particularly, as at the tip of the nose or on the upper lip. These are commentarial ideas, and there are various schools of breath meditation that locate the breath at different places. What I suggest is the location is in the nasal cavity, and the nasal cavity is inside the nose, in there, not at the tip of the nose. The tip of the nose and the nostrils are very, very small area, which is quite demanding of attention to focus on. But the nasal cavity, you can imagine that the nose is here and the breath goes in and circles around here. It goes down and then it comes back up and it passes through this nasal cavity. Now, this nasal cavity is about that big, but the way you feel it, the way you experience it is it's basically as large as the inside of your head. That's how you experience that space in there. Strangely enough, this brain that we have, this, 2.5 pounds of kind of warm, wet porridge, you don't actually feel it. You don't feel it. You have a brain in there. If you pay attention to the phenomenology, the direct experience of the interior of your breath experience, it feels like your head is basically empty, and that's good. The air is perhaps subtle on the out-breath, but it can be experienced. It is this cave which is inside your head. By the way, this word cavity, nasal cavity, means like the nose cave. And the air is just blowing into this cave and then blowing out of this cave. And you are a passive observer of this. And not to make a lot of work about this, It's more or less to just sit pleasantly in the midst of this cave in which cool air comes in and warm air, body temperature air, goes out. So that's all you have to do. The next part of your question is to do with what was the second part of the question?
With discursive thinking, the long breath and the short breath?
Yeah, you do not need to compare it to the previous breath at all. It's only approximate that was a short breath. You know that it's a short breath. And that was a longer breath. You know it's a longer breath. You don't have to be compared to what? It's enough to know. I wouldn't get too detailed or pedantic about this. You know that you don't care exactly how short it was. It's just a brief inhalation. And we do this. This is just natural. Sometimes we have a short breath and sometimes a long breath. And that's just a way of getting you to pay attention. There's nothing magical about this breath thing. It's a very neutral object to simply rest your attention on. It also is chosen because it's with you all the time. So as long as you're breathing, you have an object to rest your attention on. Normally speaking, people don't pay attention to their breathing. And because it's of not any particular interest, they would pay attention to sights and sounds, etc. So breath is basically, you're virtually unconscious about it. Every now and then you become aware of your breath, if you have shortness of breath or so forth. But it's an unusual experience because it just operates by itself. The very fact that it's quite neutral, it's neither repulsive nor attractive, is, I think, why the Buddha chose it. And it is, because it's neutral, it doesn't capture your attention. So you have to make quite an effort to stay with the breath, to attend to the breath, because it's not interesting. And then what you find out is that you are the one that generates interest towards any object of consciousness. And this development and strengthening of interest is very, very key to your well-being and happiness. If you can't pay attention, unless something is threatening your life or is very, very attractive or something like this, then you're going to have a very boring and deficient life. Your life will be deficient. It will be without interest and without presence. So presence is another word for being present in ordinary life. And when you're present in ordinary life, it means that you feel well and at ease in ordinary life. There are lots of people who can't stand ordinary life. They do anything to stimulate or get away from it. If it's so terrible, they take drugs to go to sleep, right? Or try to annihilate their consciousness somehow because it's very painful to be conscious. Others, they like being conscious, but not conscious in a normal or ordinary environment. They need strong stimulus, so they'll take stimulating drugs, or they'll go to sort of high-risk kind of activities in order to catch their own attention, or high-stimulus activities as well. This is problematic because you can't keep up this strong stimulus all the time, and then ordinary life becomes something you want to avoid. So the Buddha is reversing this. He's saying, practice this, increasing your capacity to pay attention to the most ordinary thing, that is breath, and it will enhance your life. You will feel more peaceful and present in ordinary life, which is 99% of all life is ordinary. So this is what this breath meditation is all about. Don't make too many problems for yourself. Just understand it as a place that you can go to help you think less as well. So one of the ways we distract ourselves is to think. So, if you're in a quiet room without any stimulation, you fantasize. You go into memories or you go into imagination because you can't stand to be just there. So this is one of the ways the Buddha allows you to simply be well, happy, peaceful, without having to flee into the past or into imagination or into sensory experiences. Because you are in a more or less pathological condition where you have ants in your pants. Or Thoreau calls it the St. Vitus dance. He notices that people can't seem to just sit down and be at peace. They have to be chasing around, doing something all the time. You got to be here, you got to be there. You can't just stand. So this is a common feature of people. You see it in extremes, and you see it in the normal area. And then there's people who are supernormal in the sense that they can peacefully be in a low sensory experience and be very well and happy. Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next question, Metta.
The next question is from Henry from Cambridge, Massachusetts, United States. Quote, I get that there is no self, at least when I'm reflecting upon this, and sometimes even when acting from a sense of being a self. But still, it does seem absurd that, quote, we are gifted this precious life for the sole purpose of learning that existence itself is our fundamental problem, thus leaving us with, quote, the game that must be played, unquote. What are your thoughts?
Yes. Well, one of the words that you use is gifted. So that very word gifted is from the Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic religions, where if you're getting a gift, who's giving it? So there's a gift giver there, and namely God. And from a Buddhist point of view, we don't have gifted children. We have children who are talented or have merit or paramis or highly developed aspects. So we don't attribute it as a gift. It's not an undeserved gift. So life is not an undeserved gift. Existence is something which about which we know not the beginning. And in fact, the Buddha says, don't bother trying to find out how this began, but just examine how it is. And the fact is that existence is a problem. And why is it a problem? Well, everything about a human, especially, is constantly changing. Everything about your body and mind, the sensations in your body and the sensations in your mind, your thoughts, your processes, all of the aspects of your physiological condition are changing, and most of it is out of your command, not necessarily out of your control. Sometimes you can control the situation, but not ultimately. So the body can get sick, pain can come into the body, and of course you don't want any of that stuff. So this is a problematic situation. You're not in charge of the body, and you're not in charge of your feelings. And quite often you're not even in charge of your own mind. You want to do something. You want to study for a test, but you can't seem to pay attention, so you give up. You want to like somebody, but you can't. It's so out of your command that it's subject to all kinds of pain and disappointment. So that's just the simple description of reality. And the Buddha goes through a kind of a imaginative exercise. He says, imagine any situation you want, heavenly situations, they all are subject to this continuous change. And therefore, they're not ultimately satisfactory. There might be long periods of well-being and bliss and so forth, but whatever has a nature to arise also has a nature to cease. This is kind of like physics, things, the entire universe sort of unfolds and then collapses. Everything we know is subject to this entropy and change and the exhaustion of energies. So this is any conceivable situation is ultimately unsatisfactory. And nobody put us in this situation. It just is. We don't have to imagine that who made gravity. After all, isn't it tragic that babies fall over and people fall downstairs and things like this? Like, who gifted us that? Nobody gifted you gravity, and nobody gifts you existence. These things just are. And so the Buddha is like wondering, is there a way out? At first, of course, the Buddha is not the Buddha at first. He's a seeker, a bodhisattva, a seeker. And he's wondering if you can ever solve this situation about existence. And nobody seems to have done it before. It's not around. He looks around the world. He examines various ideas. There are various kind of temporary solutions. He studies with various yogis who offer him different meditation techniques, but they don't have ultimate relief. They only have temporary relief, even though some of these things are very long-lasting. So he's searching for a solution to this, the problems of existence, and he comes up with it. And the name for that solution is Nibbana, or Nirvana. And it is quite beyond the capacity of words to describe what that is, ultimately. But in human life, it can be described as the absence of suffering. So the absence of greed, hatred, and delusion in a human. They have solved the problem, or you could say that they've dissolved the nature of the problems that arise because of ignorance. Knowledge in Buddhism is simply the dissolving of wrong approaches to existence. And with this dissolving comes a very positive experience. Positive experiences are called the factors of enlightenment. Emotionally, there's joy and ease and serenity and deep stillness, very beautiful experiences. And this is the result of having solved the problem of existence. So that is the summary of this situation. It's a matter of how you put it. And yes, at first it appears to be, why are we in this situation to begin with? But Buddhism doesn't talk about a creator God, so we can't blame God for this. We just know there's a problem and there is a solution to the problem, so we pursue the solution. Okay, let's go to the next question, Metta.
The next question is from Anonymous from Pennsylvania, United States. What are some ways that one can overcome kukkucca? Ruminating over past mistakes seems to be the biggest hurdle I'm facing in my daily practice.
Yeah, that is the third hindrance. This is like agitation and, yes, right, fourth hindrance, yeah. So the fourth hindrance, often described as worry and flurry, agitation and distress. These are body and mind, so both the body and mind are involved. The opposite of that is sloth and torpor, which one of them is of the mind and the other is of the body, and the same with the agitation and worry and flurry. This is, of course, an impediment to serenity, and there is just too much energy in the system, and so, and we can understand it. The entire society around us advocates for hyperactivity, far too much. Of course, this is not just a feature of our times. Obviously, it was around at the time of the Buddha that people couldn't settle down. They worried and were in a state of, constant sort of sense of being at the beck and call of a master that never lets you rest. So this was the simile that the Buddha gave for this hindrance, that it is like a servant who, every time they get a moment to sit down, the master has another task for them. And you can imagine what it would be like to be freed from that master. Some jobs are like that, where you're just constantly on call and harassed. You can imagine getting free of a job like that where you can actually sit down and relax. So this is the case. The other simile is that it's like wind blowing across the surface of water, endless waves and ripples. So what happens to water when the wind stops? The water becomes smooth as glass, mirror smooth. And so the mind, the Buddha says, is like water. And this excessive energies in there is rippling and causing waves. So that energy has to be reduced. And we can reduce it through a number of ways. Sometimes we can start physically. Of course, some of the yoga structures, Hatha yoga and so forth, they try to address the mind through the body, which is okay. It's stretching and holding the breath. And we in the West, quite often, people recommend exercise, like walking or swimming or all of these things. Some people, that's the only way they feel peaceful, is they go for a run, go for a walk in order to reduce the agitation of the mind. There are other techniques which are bad techniques, like drinking, drinking alcohol, taking drugs. This is a poor way of reducing the excessive energies. One way that can be reduced is just listening to Dhamma talks. The voice of another can bring you serenity. Sometimes you can't get the serenity yourself, but listening to the voice of another that's serene and focused, and yet you have some confidence in, can talk you down. That's a favorite, of course, in many cultures, is to go and get advice from a calm and wise friend, and they will talk you down. So that is what we're doing right at this moment. As you listen to this talk, perhaps you're settling down. Then there's our types of meditation, which also calm the mind. If you practice loving kindness a lot, systematically, then the mind is, one of the benefits of that is that the mind is easily calmed. Breath meditation can help too. Although it's subtle, and sometimes the mind resists that, and they can't get to the breath because it's agitated. So in those cases, you do something that is a little more stimulating than that. And eventually, if you can wind down this agitation, you may be able to get to the serenity of the breath meditation itself. So there's just a few examples. You can listen to some of my talks on the five hindrances, particularly, and their antidotes. Similes for the five hindrances and antidotes to these psychic problems, such as agitation, worry, and flurry. Yes. Okay, let's go to the next question, Metta.
The next question is from Greg from Chicago, Illinois, United States. Is it appropriate for monks to offer blessings and merit-making opportunities for lay followers who seek health, wealth, or fame, but not necessarily full liberation?
Yes, it is, and that is probably the bulk of monastic duties in this day and age. It is a wide practice for monastics throughout Asia and the West to provide opportunities for people to improve the quality of everyday life, to improve their own futures through acts which have good results. So acts of generosity, listening to Dhamma, learning also the causes of such things as reputation and fame, all of these things. Buddhism has what's called this structure or system called karma or karma. And they have very interesting explanations of why some people become famous, some people become wealthy, some people are beautiful, some people are talented. And apparently it's not simply a random result of genetics or happenstance. It's not just a matter of mere luck. Some causes in the past have been put in for this to occur. Well, you'll see this, some people are famous for being famous. You know, you wonder, why is this person famous? Like, what do they do? And apparently nothing, but they're very famous. And that's odd. And other people who are really amazing are not famous. They're obscure. They're just the most amazing artist or musician or tremendous something and just unheard of. What a mystery it is. But from a Buddhist point of view, they all have causal structures behind them. And they're not simply gifts of God as well. You're not blessed by God. It's something you develop. So lots of people, they have heard about Nibbana, but they are not quite up to the pursuit of that. But they would like to improve their life in this life and in the future lives, reduce their suffering. And that they, in the hope of Nibbana in some future life, that they will aspire to that more. But at the present, they can't see beyond a certain stage into ultimate values. So this is the largest group of Buddhists, and the monks teach them how to improve their lives and offer them opportunities to do so. Yeah.
The next question is from Grisha from Santa Fe, New Mexico, United States. After 2 decades of Vipassana practice in lay life, I have decided to go forth. I will spend this July to November in Thailand and Myanmar. Do you have any guidance for how to go about finding the right teacher and the right community for ordination?
Well, you've spent two decades in Vipassana. So you must realize that not all monastic structures use that particular system. Now, it's a vague word. Vipassana is used even by the Buddha, of course, but it just means to see clearly. What you might mean by that is a specific technique, which is called Vipassana. It's kind of, Vipassana is not a technique. It's more or less a result. It's something has allowed you to see clearly. And there are various techniques which move towards that. Primary technique is this practice of mindfulness. But that's only one factor of the path. So the whole Eightfold Path helps you see clearly. Vipassana, Pasana is the word for see, and V means like very clearly. So you might be confused in the sense that it's not some sort of technique. But some schools of Buddhism do have a very technically oriented Vipassana type meditation structure that this is so called or so named. It's not found that way in the suttas, but so particularly in Burma are these Vipassana centers, and they have different lineages. So there's 2 or 3 sort of mainstream Vipassana type monasteries. But there are other types of monasteries. The forest tradition of Thailand particularly is a more large naturalistic school, which for a monastic just trains you in the proper conduct for monks. And they recognize that there's a whole range of personalities that benefit from different teachings. So the Buddha has given out many, many different teachings. Traditionally 38 types of meditation subjects. But it's also an entire lifestyle as well. So this might be different than you imagine from your Vipassana type practices. And certainly if it's been I think the Goenka school type of Vipassana, it will be startlingly different than that. If it was a Burmese or like a Mahasi Sayadaw type of Vipassana practice, it will again. There are schools of monastics that practice like that, but there are other schools that are very different. So you want to inquire, you want to ask yourself, do I want to continue in this Vipassana mode, or do I want to explore something that's so broader in its approach to the development of the mind? That school would be in the northeast of Thailand primarily. There is a monastery called the International Forest Monastery in northeast Thailand, which is, people will speak English, and there'll be monks from all over the world there. And that's a very important international monastery. But if you go to a Vipassana monastery in Burma, you're likely to have problems even with language and so forth, etc. So it's worth thinking about and inquiring, what do you mean by Vipassana practice for decades, Yeah. Okay, let's go on to the next question.
Yes, Ajahn. Sticking with the topic of ordination, we have a question from Anonymous from Ontario, Canada. I've wanted to become a monk since 2014 or 15. However, at that time I had student loans to pay off. Since then, I've managed to pay off my financial debts, get my parents' permission, and have enough money saved to give back to my parents when I get ordained. My question is, how do I go about becoming a monk?
Right, a very nice aspiration. And as a side note, one must be free of debt in order to become a monk, and so that person has paid off their student debts and so forth. You can't become a monk if you still have monetary debt. So they patiently move towards that situation. They got their parents' blessing and so forth, and the next stage is to find quality monastic life. Now, not all monasteries are equal. Not all monks in the world are behaving in a in a kind of an exemplary manner. The thing is that, so most of the monks in the world are in Asia. They're in Sri Lanka, Myanmar, that is Burma, and Thailand. And there are, I don't know, at least, there's probably close to 750,000 monks in those countries. Now, in those countries, especially in Thailand and Burma, culturally speaking, it's important for people who, young men primarily, if they could spend a little time in the robes, at least a little time, if they could be a monk for a short period of time. There's a huge cultural process where young men are ordained for as little as a week or a few months. And you can imagine that this kind of temporary ordination is not really all that serious, and they don't have time to really train or anything like that, but it's thought to be, a good meritorious deed to do. So that is not what you're looking for. This brief temporary ordination is not that valuable. You would be better off actually just living a very focused lay life where you're going to lots of retreats or attending monasteries, even as a layperson in good situations. But if you're serious, then you want to go to these meditation monasteries where they are devoting their lives and they're maintaining the high disciplines of what is called the Vinaya. These are the rules of conduct for monastics. And they're important, and they're not well followed in many places in the Asian world. So that's their first consideration. Does this monastery that I'm looking at follow the Vinaya, the rules of conduct for monks? Do the monks hold a high standard of virtuous behavior? If not, it's really not a good idea to go there. Second, do they actually practice meditation in a systematic, long-term way? And is the abbot or the teachers there, are they long-practiced monks who are engaged in the progress towards enlightenment? Do they know the teachings of the Buddha well? So this is what you're looking for, is quality monasteries. For a Westerner, again, you got language and culture problems. You can't just go to any place because if they don't speak English, it's a tedious business to learn a second language and then the cultural things. So now there are enough Western monks, long trained Western monks that are fluent in the suttas and in the Vinaya, well behaved, and with deep experience themselves. So I tend to favor Westerners going to train with Western monks who speak your language. And there are branch monasteries around the world connected to, associated with Birken Monastery. There's 35, 36 monasteries around the world. There are monasteries in Thailand as well where English is spoken, and they're international monasteries that have very good training. The International Forest Monastery is one of them in Thailand, northeast Thailand. So these are a few suggestions for how to go forth. Next question.
The next question is from Andrew from Bingen Hill, Kent, United Kingdom. I wish to exit samsara as quickly as possible. Apart from becoming a bhikkhu, what is the best way to achieve this goal?
Well, to saturate yourself with Dhamma, to try to simplify your life as well. I mean, you can't live a life that is very distracted and expect to make progress with clarifying the mind and meditation. So it requires altering your lifestyle as a layperson you must have a commitment to virtuous behavior, which is called sila. So you have to live within the bounds of these guidelines. And you have to be very careful with how you deal with other people in society. It's quite awkward in society, and unless you kind of withdraw, you can't really have an open social life. You can't go to drinking parties or, Well, you see, alcohol. Once you take away alcohol and drugs, then you're almost marginalized. So everybody wants you to have a drink, my friend. Have a drink, And can you find a social structure where you don't have to be dragged into drinking and smoking weed with, it's just so many. It's awkward, though. An entire half the world, more than half, most of the world is like very loose with their interest in clarity, and a lot of secondary frivolous types of activities. A lot of the sporting stuff and frivolous kind of activities are not in line with progress towards enlightenment. So what should you do is have a quiet life. You associate only with those who you're able to remain sober around and who are not engaged in all kinds of frivolous talk and nonsense. And then you also would try to find some good teachers where you go to retreats with them, you get good instruction in meditation, and you try to find a livelihood that is within the proper bounds, and then listen to a lot of Dhamma talks, which are so available now through this medium, like you're listening to this Q&A right now, and this information was very difficult to get before, and now it's easy to get. So you can immerse yourselves in these. There are monks all around the world giving good Dhamma talks on this medium, and there are books, and then you have to find personal companions that are also on the path. So that's how you would do it. Okay, so we have time for one more question, I think.
The next question is from Upasaka Carolina from Panama. Why has CITTA sometimes been translated as heart? What does heart mean in the context of Buddhism? In this case, is it an emotional quality of the mind? Could you elaborate on this topic?
Yeah, I don't think Pali doesn't really have a word for emotion. So the citta is these are processes of we would mental processes, but they are connected with emotional qualities as well. What the way the Buddha conceives of this is there's something called 5 khandhas, 5 groupings, aggregates. The body, feelings. So the feelings are bodily sensations, pleasant, neutral, and painful. And then there are mental states, but when you ask for the description, what is it meant by citta, or what was called citta nupassana, the third foundation of mindfulness, it says angry or not, greedy or not, ignorant or not, expansive or not. So you can see that this is what we would call emotion. Citta, investigation of citta, and is deeply connected with what we would call emotion, because anger is an emotion. There's further investigation into what is causing this anger. So then they would parse out the mental activity that is associated with anger and greed. For instance, anger the background of anger, the underlying cause of anger is unwise attention to the fault. And the underlying cause of greed is unwise attention to the beautiful. So this is, they can't be separated. So the khandhas the khandhas are the body, feelings, perception, consciousness, and volition. And these can be talked about, they can sort of be talked about independently, but they can't actually be separated. You can't really have consciousness without perception, without feeling. Feeling is laced into experience. Anger has a feeling tone to it, which is described as unpleasant. So anger arises with unpleasant feeling tone. And why is it arising? Well, there's a perception. And what is the perception? Some sort of fault, something is not the way you want it to be. It's bad, you don't like it. It shouldn't be that way. And that arises with a volition. What is the volition? The volition is you're the one that initiates anger. You have created anger by a decision-making process. You might think it just happens spontaneously, but it doesn't. It actually, you're the one that is angry, and you made yourself angry. And that's a decision that you made. It might have occurred very rapidly, but so there's volition, perception, and then consciousness. You're conscious of the object, which is causing the anger, and then you're conscious, and you should be conscious, of the fact that you're angry. So you can see, and then you can feel this through your body. Can't you feel anger in the body? These are all, you see, all of these 5 khandhas are all interrelated, and like a 5-spice curry. You put the 5 different spices in a plastic bag and you shake it all up, and then you put it into the stew, and then you taste the stew, and there's 5 tastes, but they're all playing and interplaying with each other. So you can't really separate them out. So CITTA is mind processes, but it also includes what we would call emotional aspects. Okay, so that is the end of our question and answers for today. And we should be back live streaming next week.